I like having fun. This is me having another day at the office. But believe it or not, I am born and raised in New York City, a place that has a weird sort of pride in being miserable. And I remember when I first started exploring the city on my own, everything was so new and exciting. But soon enough, it just became normal city life, and I became just another jaded New Yorker. And then one day, everything changed. It was just another winter walk in Central Park on a cold, crisp day, and what I wasn't expecting was this. Christo and Jean-Claude the Gates had completely transformed the park with miles of gold along the pathways. The same walk that I had done hundreds of times before and never thought twice about was now a sublime, immersive experience, and it just took me somewhere that I never imagined that I could go. And I spent hours wandering, just caught in this mesmerized state of awe. And I remember afterwards I sat down with my salty hot dog and pretzel, and I was trying to make sense of it all, and I thought to my 15-year-old self, I said, wait a minute, you can spend millions of dollars to build giant things in cities that serve no other purpose than to make people happy? That's awesome! And when can we see more of it? I took it upon myself to actually answer that question, and in the years since, I've dedicated my work to helping people feel that same sense of delight and discovery that I felt on that magical winter day. Through both guerrilla interventions and my public art work, I've focused on reimagining mundane urban experiences into opportunities for joy. And it all started with simple observations. I was coming out of dinner one day, and I saw this parking sign. Nothing too special, but it had an interesting way of framing the world around it. So my girlfriend was out of town, and I had a lot of free time that weekend. And I thought, let's expand on that. Let's add a little sense of poetry to the everyday. Bike racks, they're everywhere. You know, I ride my bike and I use them all the time, but I couldn't help but think that maybe something more could go here. Maybe something a bit more joyous. How about a little bit of music? And people welcomed it. I mean, seriously, who doesn't like hitting gongs? I remember everything became a chance to challenge the status quo of urban design, to create a new reality that was more human, more emotional, more reflective of us. I remember when Amazon announced its drone delivery service. Soon the idea of drones zipping overhead and delivering packages became a very concrete reality. But I thought that we can do better than this. We can use this technology differently. So because it was Christmas, naturally, the alternative was to create a mistletoe drone. So for one afternoon in San Francisco, a typical plaza became a scene where showing affection, sometimes very aggressively, showing affection, joy, and love became the norm. And some couples really showed a lot of affection that day. But I was also interested in tackling bigger issues like noise and congestion in cities, which still make me feel really stressed. I was trying to think of, amidst the chaotic rhythms of the city, how could we connect people to the rhythms of their bodies? My answer to that was a public art installation called Pulse of the City that turns your heartbeats into music, giving people a chance to stop and to listen to themselves, to hear what their body was telling them for the first time, and to have fun doing so. So we installed 5 of these in the city of Boston, and there were 8,000 interactions with Pulse of the City. That's 8,000 examples of people stopping from point A to point B and taking a moment to open themselves up to something magical. Now, sure, this is all neat and cool, but isn't it ultimately kind of frivolous, right? I mean, how are we gonna afford all this? So imagine with me for a moment a city that doesn't go against joy, but just doesn't really prioritize it. You might call it boring. In boring, underpasses are gray and empty, and stairs are gray and empty, and so on and so forth, and it looks oddly familiar, right? But the funny thing is that just down the road, a few miles over, is another place. Here, underpasses, with just a simple addition, become places for gathering. Stairs, with just a simple addition, become lively social centers. In happy adventure, designing for function and designing for joy are not mutually exclusive exercises. In fact, they go hand in hand because inspiring spaces get used more. It's not rocket science. People go where they feel good. And where people go, so do the dollars. The Gates generated $254 million for the city of New York in 2 weeks. 4 million people went to Central Park in 2 weeks to go look at curtains because they loved it, and it makes them feel awesome. And they bought a lot of hot dogs over there. During Pulse of the City, while I was working on it, I started another project in parallel. My mom called this procrastination. I was, quite frankly, unsatisfied with cities, and so I decided to create my own, one where joy was a priority. Now, naturally, in this city, we have things like skyscraper ziplines. Crosswalk trampolines. And obviously, disco ball traffic lights. So one thing kept leading to the other, and soon enough, there was 50 illustrations that came together in a book. And as I started showing this book to my friends, really interesting things started happening. They started saying, "Hey, George, well, what about this?" Or, "George, what about this idea?" Their own urban imaginations had been activated. And it was latent within them all this time. We have the capacity to design for joy. We just seem to think that it's not quite important enough. Or perhaps that we don't deserve it. We have a choice as a society. We can continue building and shaping our cities to be boring, or we can have more happy adventures. Which would you rather live in? Thank you so much.